Yeah, baby, you know what time it is. Now let's get it started.
Are you kidding me? Unreal!
While our HBCUs are mostly known for academic rigor, community, they also know how to turn up.
Does he have it? Yes, he does!
And that might be the knockout punch.
Salutations, another episode of Fangs up here. And man, oh man, it's a great time to be alive. Very frustrating time to be a Rattler, though. If you watched yesterday's football game, I was there. We didn't do a post game just because, as you saw, ONG strike. So we might be working a little something out post games where instead of trying to split the audience, we just all come together. Like, kind of makes sense. Like, we're going to be able to be successful. We work better together. That's my opinion. So, for those instant reactions, we may be joining forces, and that's why I definitely didn't do it. Also, I was driving, so since I was driving back and not staying the night, I want to make sure that I didn't overdo myself. So, but it was a great change from last week. I'll say that, as far as game experience, definitely I prefer the outcome that we had in Miami, but as far as a content creator, I prefer the treatment I got in Tampa. I definitely will say the good people at Raymond James Stadium were awesome, much more fun, much more and much more inviting, just as far as content creation. And I think I got better content this year than I've gotten in quite a while. So, especially at an NFL stadium. So, good times were had, and it was an interesting night. So we saw where last night FAMU we lost. I don't know any nice way or other way to be fake or phony about it. FAMU lost the game to the University of South Florida, and it just kind of capped a weekend that was sports wise a little rough as far as between your major sports, FAMU football and FAMU volleyball. FAMU volleyball, kind of tough road trip there, or tough home stand. I said road trip, which concluded today. FAMU did lose to Georgia Tech, and it's early in the season, so let's just be honest about what it is. Let's not sit up here and rant and rave and get overly. Let's not be fake about this. Let's be real about this. It's going to take a few weeks for them to hit their stride. 2-7 right now, but with that, it's just going to take them a little second. We beat South Alabama on Thursday, lost to Stetson on Friday, Georgia Tech on Sunday. All three were home games. So you got 1 for 3, which conference season hasn't started. You don't start the conference for a few more weeks. So that's a good thing. You got till the 22nd to kind of get ready for the Southwestern Athletic Conference and for them to get ready for you volleyball wise. So good times there. Now back to the and I almost wanted to call it a classic because it had a classic vibe as far as playing in a different atmosphere. We definitely missed the 100. I will say that you definitely missed the marching 100 there. But man, the tailgate and everything else, that scene was awesome. I definitely spoke with some people who work with the boosters and were like, yo, we got to get that schedule out, and National Alumni Association as well. But that was a vibe. I didn't get to attend all of it, but I did get to see it, and it was fun. It was fun. Looked really good. Looked really solid. And just in general, man, look, if you haven't been to Ray J, it's a different type of NFL stadium, and it doesn't show its age. So that was just kind of outside the stadium, and even going in, like you can see, like they reported a crowd of about 30 some odd thousand. Not bad. This is pregame. Got there a little bit before the game started, and it was solid. And FAMU opens the game. Look, we kind of started off a little warm. We did score early, and it was just one of those nights, though. Like in the first half, you could tell that South Florida's pace of play was going to be very important to them, and it was something that did bother FAMU kind of early. It's not like we weren't unprepared for it, and even post game, Coach Simmons mentioned that it's hard to prepare for something like that. And he's not wrong. It was, and you can see how very important it was, but you also saw how young that team is and how inexperienced they were. And it was something that you could take advantage of. But we saw in that first drive, FAMU actually played a pretty balanced brand of football. And we would later hear from those who cover USF how important it was for them that they stopped FAMU as far as from running the ball. They wanted to make sure that they made FAMU one dimensional, which is the thing that I definitely know that I stated, hey, you got to look for them to do, but something that you had to do to them because uh, you know, as Kelvin pointed out, one of the first things I noticed was that quarterback was not accurate. He can be, but he's a freshman, and I'm not going to project anything else. But I will say, if he can work on his accuracy, he's got a chance to be something. And in this case, we were able to see that FAMU's defense was going to carry the day, but the offense. And really, I mean, it's crazy. You don't place blame. You don't place blame. Too bad. But two players have 5 turnovers. It's crazy, man. It's a crazy stat when you kind of look at it because at first you just look and say, "Fam, you had 5 turnovers," but then you start to see the turnovers, and it was baffling. To be honest, I mean, because you get your kick returner who last week, you know, one week you get to be the GOAT, and the other week you're not. And this week he probably could be seen as one of the scapegoats. But you see where Riley has 2 huge fumbles. That kick return, to me, that was part of it was just trying to do too much, trying to replicate what you did in the previous week. But as Coach Simmons mentioned, go back and watch the post game interview, and I know Brian dropped it as well as man, the HBCU game day. They also released it. I didn't upload my version because I felt like the sound quality wasn't high enough. So, but it is what it was. It was solid. It's just some of hearing Coach wasn't great, but you were able to see where Coach was talking about ball security and just where we hold the ball and the importance of holding the football in the correct area, and that's when you go back and watch. That's what happened on the fumbles. You'll see where, especially with Riley, the ball on the kickoff return, the ball is really just out there. It's very open, and somebody punches the ball away from him, and he loses it. On the second one, I think it's another one. It's an effort. It's an effort fumble to me where you're trying to do too much. You're probably trying your hardest, and in that you have a mental flub, and you forget that if I run a little slower and protect the ball, I may get a little better success. Both times that's to me what I saw happen, and those 5 turnovers were the difference in the game. I mean, go and look at how many times and consider FAMU gives up 5 turnovers and only gives up 3 points. Like you had more turnovers than you did points that University of South Florida got off those turnovers. It's hard to win games with 5 turnovers, and but we saw that and then the other thing, and a lot of us, again, this was your armchair quarterback's game. If you're an armchair quarterback, this is the game where you're second guessing everything the coach did. You're asking why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? This was your game. If you're that guy that's going to be second guessing the football coach, you were right all night long. I mean, and it really was that. But I marked in my notes, and I kept up with the game really until the fourth quarter. I stopped doing the notes as much. But we struggled to run the ball, but I felt like we didn't do a great job of coming back to the run. I mean, we had drives where we went back a lot. It seemed like we ran a lot of the shotgun formation still. And USF, again, they were purposeful in taking away the run. We noticed where early on in the drives, they were definitely stacking the box. But it just was one of those things where we had some drives where we threw the ball too much. We still ran the ball quite a bit. I mean, I have my game stats in front of me, but over 20 times we just didn't get a good yards per carry average, and especially kind of later in the game when you had kind of abandoned it a little more. We still had some drives where we just really threw the ball too much. I mean, one of our picks was on a screen, and it was one of those where to me it wasn't a great play call. And that was kind of one of the themes. I think if you go back and watch the film, you're going to notice that I don't think we were able to get in sync. I mean, rhythm is a thing to say, or momentum, but if you want to get away from saying the word momentum, I don't think we always called plays that were really set up to work. I think sometimes we ran some plays where kind of scratch your head a little bit, and maybe we tried to get too much back. We maybe tried to be too aggressive. And the other thing, again, I'm still I still like Musa, but I think sometimes it's one of those things where the kid's smart, but at the same point, you may need to take a little some pressure off of him. We saw a post game where Coach Simmons talked about how this is the probably the most responsibility he's given to a quarterback in Jeremy Musa, and you'll often hear him go back and cite Ryan Stanley and some of his successes. But I mean, and Ryan Stanley was a solid quarterback at FAM, but he also was the guy that definitely struggled against Cookman. That's going to be something that is going to be a black eye for his tenure at FAMU, and a lot of times it was because, man, we were asking him to really carry the team sometimes. And I think that was one of the things that I personally pointed out as far as with Musa. I don't need Musa to carry the team. He's capable. He is. But at the same point, when he's throwing 30 times and you're getting 3 picks, and one of the picks was a garbage pick. I mean, the last pick, I'm with Musa. He was asked about it. He's like, I don't really count that pick. And neither do I. I was on the field and it's like, this is garbage time. Like, he's just trying to make something happen, trying to see what he can get. But we need to run some plays where he doesn't have to think so much. He has the ability to go through progressions, but when he's getting games where he's having 2 and 3 picks, how much are we doing to help him get to the next level? I mean, not saying that Moose is an NFL quarterback, but I'm just saying if his stats are, if he's finishing the season with 10, 15 picks, it's not a conversation we had. Whereas right now we're looking at him going to the second game. I mean, you got 3 picks in the second game. Last week, no picks. So if we can keep that number to where it's like 6 or 7 for the season and get that touchdown average up, I think you actually have a conversation to be had about, can Musa play pro somewhere? Maybe not the NFL, but somewhere. But in some of that, we have to protect him. And that's just me. I could be wrong, but I pointed out during the game, and I remember Kelvin kind of brought it back up in the third quarter. He's like, you said this before, Moose is really smart. Maybe you need to not put so much on him. It's like, yeah, like, because when Musa gets to throwing in rhythm to where he's not thinking about it, it's a thing of beauty. We saw, especially early on, that first drive, go back and look, Musa's just throwing in rhythm. I mean, yeah, he's breaking down the offense, and the kid's cerebral as heck. But go back and watch the film. The plays where you're really asking him to break down coverage, move this, move that. He could do it, but at times it was just you gotta pull the reins in on the Mustang, because he's wild and he's free and he's young and he's trying to show you that he can do all these things. But at the same point, sometimes you gotta pull the reins and say, hey man, let me pull you in, let me help you get into a rhythm, so that once you get into a rhythm, you're good. And I think for the first 3 drives, because the first drive is scripted. We've seen that in most football programs have that going. But notice the second drive that FAMU has on a lot of our games is where we struggle. And we definitely talked even last season about how FAMU struggles at the beginning of football games. And some of that, this is just be my perspective, it's where, okay, we've gotten away from that first drive that is scripted where everything's ready to go. And we're getting into that second drive where it's okay, the defense is doing this, they're giving me this, I'm supposed to do this, I'm supposed to do that, I'm supposed to move this guy here. Like all of a sudden, it's the chess part of the game, but it's an overload, if you ask me. I could be wrong, but I do feel like it's an information overload. And I'll say that partially because I recognize even in myself when you're overloading me with information, I'm gonna pause. And I'm like, this is too much. I think the similar thing is what we're seeing with FAMU's football team and what we saw with Musa in this game. I felt like we overloaded him with information, especially when he was constantly in the shotgun, because believe it or not, personally, I actually feel like Musa is better when he's under center for a little while. I don't know if he just gets a different view of the field. I definitely know he definitely scans the field in the shotgun and he's breaking down the whatnot. But it just seems like under center, man, when he's throwing under center, he gets into a flow. And it's just something I saw. Like that was something, but also Musa took some shots. Like go back and watch. This is probably the most hits that we've seen Jeremy Musa take in quite a while. And that's not, knocking the kid or anything, but it's definitely something where he definitely took a lot of shots. And it brought in the question, did you need to rotate a quarterback from Kelvin, which is a good question. Right. We saw that in the post game, and it's kind of like, I mean, I don't know, do you want to do that? And so I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying. But we also saw with the running game, man, that's probably the worst outcome we're gonna see for most of the season. And honestly, in the first half, I was telling Kelvin, I was like, I can't do an instant reaction right now because for me it was just frustrating because it was so much of what you as a fan knew we couldn't do to succeed is what we did with the turnovers, with the lack of ability to run and lack of commitment to the run at times. Because to me, we had a little both. We had a little bit of both, and I felt like second half we really weren't able to run the ball as much because we didn't really do much against the defense that made them, just we didn't wear them down enough. And I felt like we could have used some of our two tight end sets more, but we also, man, first half those penalties, man, penalties. Go back and look at the stat book. I'll say that it's deceiving because if you look at the first half penalties, maybe actually wasn't that bad. We had Cheney gets a couple penalties, and I got questions about how we're tackling and what are we teaching in tackling because we had a lot of guys get penalties for hands to the face, and some of our players were tackling high. Some of that's just because the USF players were ducking. Like if you go back and you'll watch, like, how is this happening? How is that happening? It's because the USF players, when they are trying to get away, they were ducking. So naturally, when you duck, you change the strike zone of where you're trying to hit the player. That's just in that case, that's something we saw, and something I noticed. I'll point that out. But man, we saw where I think early on Cheney had 3 penalties, and some of them were effort, but it was a lot of the hands to the face penalties and things like that. And we also struggled at times to get off coverage or to really get off of blocks. And we missed tackles. Like that's something we've seen 2 weeks in a row. Man, the first half, we throwing a lot of shoulders. It's a lot of I'm gonna throw a shoulder at it, and you throwing shoulders. That's a great way for you to get hurt. It really is. That's how you get stingers. And we didn't wrap up as well. I mean, we definitely major wrapping up because that dude's just a fiend. But those missed tackles kept you on the field. That's just something that we all noticed. But the other thing, FAMU was able to get some stops off of that. Like that this defense is potential. And for what we saw out of this game, I definitely, and you can tell, as Kelvin pointed out, I was watching the game next to them, and I was definitely the armchair quarterback. Like because you could feel the game slipping away, but then you saw the defense. In spite of everything we saw for 4 quarters, FAMU's defense shined. And if this is the kind of defense we're going to get this season, woe betide, because the offense didn't do you a lot of favors. They scored, but the offense gave and the offense taketh away. They gave 5 turnovers, had some, a couple penalties, and the defense had a lot of those penalties, I'll be honest. But the offense was killing us with the turnover. And 2 players, 5 turnovers. Really 4 because that last pick. But still, if this is the defense performance we're going to get from Florida A&M University's football team, SWAC, you're on notice. This is going to be a problem. And we went into the first half, and the game was tight. It was surprisingly tight. And I'm going to reference this, but considering how bad we looked in the first half of football, man, we were in the game, and you really could have won. That's one of I don't do the woulda, shoulda, couldas, and if you're a USF fan, I'm not going to be that guy to say, man, we should have beat y'all. But I'll say it here: we could have won that game. That's not a we should have, but that's a game where FAMU had a good, and you definitely saw where, man, next week, man, that's gonna be an ugly game. Like, if you're a Bama fan, it might be a decent way to get a ticket and a half. Like, it was tight. It was a really close game. We definitely missed the band. That's a game where in the future, I'm with those who feel we're in the state of Florida. I understand why not, but at the same point, the atmosphere was different. Give USF's band their credit. They were solid. Like, in the stands, they were pretty good. They sounded straight. You could definitely tell that they have an influence of individuals who play what was straight. I mean, it was nice. I saw some great people. I got to see, obviously, faces. He is one of the panelists very often. I'm not one of the panelists as often just because it's the school year, y'all. So by the time I'm getting in and kind of getting settled, get the kids right, get myself right, I'm in there and I'm trying not to go to sleep on the panel. So, so, but I got to see. I told y'all, man, the venue is straight. Like, this is the pirate ship, and honestly, this is when you walked out of the tunnel, like, you could see, like, USF had a decent attendance. I mean, the stadium seats 60,000. It's nowhere close to campus, so you're not going to get a lot of the students just roll up. Area there is going to kind of fill up a little bit. So it was a nice turnout and a good amount of rattlers that were there. I mean, again, the tailgate was lit. I didn't get to head over that way because we were kind of over to the side. We did a little something different, but we were watching, and because we were trying to hurry up and get the stadium. I ain't gonna lie to you. So I I enjoyed it though, and I got to see some of the pictures and whatnot from those who were there. Good times, and we could hear the music. Like, y'all were bumping. I asked them a question about special teams. I was that guy. I was the one who was, what happened to special teams? What happened then? Like, and so this week I was purposeful to not be as negative. I was definitely like, okay, this could be a definite game where I could be an a-hole, or I could just come here and I can ask good questions. And so I asked them, like, okay, the kicking team looked better. I still have questions, but some of that's just me being a fan. Like, oh, my volume's in and out. Thank you, thank you. Let me see.
I found this on the web for how it died on me. Check it out.
And then Siri happened. Oh, there we go. So pick back up. Thank you, Tamara. But it was one of those games where we were able to see that in my little kind of was it was interesting. And look, I'm trying to check the volume myself, see what happens. Hopefully, it's not something that continues to happen because that's not good content. But they fixed it. I think I fixed it. Awesome. We're good. Thank you. Apologize. But in the second half, we saw where I had to ask the question, like, yo, our kicker has been doing a lot of kicking, and how did you feel about that? Because again, the field goal team was what it was last week. The punt team was great though. Like Trey Willoy, he was there partially saving the day. I mean, he does have one for the game. Your punt team was great, and I think this is why he was all swag. I think this is how he becomes all swag. This is how he maybe gets to play after FAMU. But one of the other things, again, the field goal kicking was improved. But this week it was the kick return team where you kind of had some issues, and you definitely saw where we put the kicking team's returner, and that was just it was a need because at that point in the game it it was problematic because you had the fumbles, you are starting to maybe not gain as much yardage as you would hope, and you start seeing where hey, let's take this ball to the 25. We saw a lot more fair catches on kick return, and coordinators and Coach Simmons' minds after all of that happened. So we started kind of taking the yards that we were getting, but then again in the they definitely were very, very aggressive. I mean, the boxes were loaded, but I also felt get to the ball and whatnot. So, um, and I'll reiterate that I felt like the plays took way too long for us to get to the ball. Works. Oh, there it goes. It's picking up now. Cool. All right. So there's a ram in the bush. And there we go. So, sorry, don't know why it's doing that, but I definitely felt like when it came to our play calling, it didn't support what we were trying to do. And when we did try to run some of our shorter passes, we saw where especially Musa throws a interception on a screen, it just wasn't available. But you also looked like you had two guys there in the same place at the same time. Like you had two receivers. You had looks like the receiver, the running back. All these players are not quite where they're supposed to be, and that was leading to some additional reasons and or additional problems. So overall, for me, by the time we get into the fourth quarter, I mean, you do get another pick. We just try to do too much. You just it was a game where offensively, I felt we tried to really prove that Musa was the man, and that wasn't what we really needed to do. You didn't have to prove that Musa was the guy all night. What you needed to do was go in there, really establish the run as best as possible, and then build from there. And some of it, as Willie Simmons pointed out, and it was a great point. You're not going to run directly into a run blitz all game. Like that's not smart. But at the same point, you still can do this. And that's just for me, that's my key takeaway. So um I just felt like in the moment we didn't do great at that. We didn't do great at making sure that we ran the ball, but we also didn't do great at putting our players in the best position to succeed. So for the 4 quarters that it just wasn't what we needed it to be. And you definitely missed some of the key players in FAMU athletics. You missed the band there. AD was there, and she's always AD Sykes. I don't really have a problem with AD Sykes. Some of y'all do. I'm cool with her. I get it. But at the same point, what I didn't like overall, I just didn't like the turnovers. Like everything else was awesome. Like the atmosphere was great, the fan experience was great, the everything. Like it was really awesome. That was a well put on event, very professional, very first class. The Bucks did, and the USF and everyone involved did a great job. But it's just those small things kind of kicked us in the teeth. And really, I think that would be the takeaway from the game. Small things add up to make big things, and those small things cost you the game. And I think going into next week, this is a good game to screw up in because you are playing. That's probably the best team you're going to play this season. But now going into your next game against West Florida, you're going against another coach that comes from that tree of coaches that run high-speed offense, high-tempo offense. This coach has spent time at Clemson last year. We've seen what Clemson has been, but what they are. But West Florida's scoring points. And West Florida is a team that probably has more experience. Across Division I corner, former Division I corner, played at Georgia Southern, previously was committed to Tennessee, and he actually played with a major at Indianapolis Community College in Independence Community College, in Independence, Kansas. And you're going to see where that team has some transfers. They got some dudes that can play. They have some talent. This is not going to be a team where they're devoid of talent and that they're struggling. This is a team that's actually pretty solid and pretty good, and that you're going to have to watch out for. And if you come out there half-stepping and playing around, you're going to get beat at home. This is not a West Florida team that the first game they put up, I believe, like 35 points, and they won their last game, and they only gave up 6 points. So, granted, are they the team that the University of South Florida is? Absolutely not. But do they have the potential to beat you? Yeah. And have West Florida teams giving you hell before? Yeah. Last 2 games, they both 35-3. So just kind of come over there and check it out. Like, those are not teams that are inexperienced and incapable. And one of the things with West Florida is that was like an 11-hour trip that they made yesterday. 11-hour trip, and they still beat them. Like, they had 25 first downs. They more passing yards than rushing yards. And their coach stated that he wants to run the ball a lot. They ran for 200 yards. They passed for 300. The team's explosive. Like, don't come in this game and they have over 500 yards. This is not a team that you're going to want to really be jacking around with. Now, they were heavily penalized, 15 penalties for 160 yards, but that's not something you can really like talk about if you're FAMU, because we ended up with over 100 yards in penalties, and almost all of them, not almost all, but a lot of them came in the second half. And we had like 50 yards going into the first half, and second half, I think we get the other 60. Like, it's a team where they only punted twice. And looking here, like, West Florida has the potential to beat you. And if you come up there schlepping around and jacking around, you got to be ready. Just like I had the second mic here ready to go, and that just happened. Thank you, Tamar, because I didn't realize the mic was going out. I was trying to listen, but it didn't play back. Same thing here. Like, you got to make sure you're prepared. This is a team where, again, they have enough Division I transfers and players with Division I experience that they can present a problem, and they're consistent. Like, 2019 national champions, at the Division II level, all that talent didn't leave. And they did bring some in. And just like FAMU, they're active in the transfer portal. They are actively bringing in good talent. And this team has scored 70 points in their first couple of games. FAMU scored a little right around 70 ourselves, a little bit over 70, about it was at 80, looks like 86, something like that. Could be wrong. But I digress. I think it's 76 actually. But you're starting to see where in our next game at home, first home game, we can't come out there and just think we're going to beat this team over the head. This is going to be a game where I told y'all before, West Florida is one of my concerns on the schedule. This is going to be one of those games where by the end of the game, a lot of us are going to be walking around either kind of annoyed or surprised at how close it was. I don't think it's the blowout that it could have been, but where in the next one. This game, FAMU's defensive line did damage again. We had 5 sacks. The next game, you're probably going to have something similar where you're going to be looking again because FAMU's defensive ends are like that. But that's just going to be something that we're going to have to look out for. But yeah, after the game in Tampa, man, post game, we definitely got to, see that the big things were turnover, penalties to a certain degree, but really the turnovers. To me, play calling was another big thing. And I felt like sometimes we needed to simplify it a little bit, simplify the offense. And going forward, we're going to need to do that. You have to simplify this offense. Otherwise, it's going to be a problem. And if you don't simplify it, to read the defense so much, you're going to have mistakes. And it's not because he's not capable. It's because he is capable and because he is smart and because he is talented and because he is such a cerebral guy with high potential. He's trying to sometimes prove it. And we really have to take care of him. One of some of the best quarterbacks we've seen. Go look at a Jalen Hurts when he was with his time at the Philadelphia Eagles. At first, very much of a protected quarterback. Now they've released, kind of get a little more freedom, but you're also seeing where when quarterbacks tend to be required to do a whole lot, they tend to make a lot more mistakes. Whereas when you allow them to get into the flow of the game, you let them kind of stay on pace, but also kind of stay on a schedule, really, I think better things happen. So I think the first series for FAMU is going to be scheduled out, and it was scheduled out. But after that, run some plays that require Musa to read 4 or 5 different areas like that. Make his reads a little more simple. Let him start out where force him on the game. And I think that was one of the things we did. I felt like we really tried at times to force Musa to be the all-American, all-SWAC player that he can be, opposed to, okay, let's let the game come to Musa into a vibe and gets into a rhythm. Then we can start asking him to do more because he's shown more. But after you've thrown, pick number 2, you kind of started to be like, all right, we're forcing it a little bit. And I think we forced it a little bit, just being honest. And I felt like Musa forced it a little bit. And it went awry. And it went awry kind of fast, but we stayed in the game because we probably had the best defense in the Southwestern Athletic Conference at this time. So good times, man. It was interesting. Look forward to seeing y'all on Saturday on the Hill, man. Definitely making all intents and purposes of being there. And we're probably going to do a little something post game, a little simulcast. We trying to do some things this year. So some good times that we're hopefully looking for some more booster events and other things like that, because man, that cookout was some fun, man. I didn't get to catch it, but I got to see it. And like I said, we got there kind of pushing it a little late, and I knew if I went over there, I was gonna be late going to the stadium because I was gonna be socializing and everything else. So, but it was fun, good time. FAMU does lose the game, but on Thursday we're gonna talk about this upcoming game again. I gave y'all a little sneak peek, a little bit on West Florida. Go and watch some of their coaches shows. They got some D1 talent on there. They're not a bunch of This isn't a low-level Division II team. This is a Division II team that you need to pay attention to and that you want to watch because we definitely saw where FAMU's receivers, I did forget to highlight them. We had Nicholas Dixon look solid. Like that's a guy that I wanted to see that out of. That did my heart good. Shareed, he did his thing. Like, I mean, he's doing everything on the field. We definitely we lost Riley for a second, but come on back. It's FAMU. We ain't gonna treat you like the other folks. And we also saw where Gassett had a catch, man. Look for him. I'm telling y'all, by the 5th, 6th game of the season, Gassett's gonna be a dude that I think you're gonna see a lot more. That's a Buffalo transfer, a wide receiver. He had a catch in that game. He should have had another one probably, but that's a guy with some potential. Again, FAMU's team is deep. And considering when you play like straight boo-boo trash and still had a chance to win the game late, because that last touchdown they score, you just clicked your heels together and fell over. Like that's saying something, and it's not saying a good thing because it also says like, yo, you did a great job of recruiting. Like between Coach Riz and Coach Simmons and that whole staff, FAMU recruiting was great. And then you can see it on the field. And give this team another year of recruiting like that, because you're going to lose a lot. But just what we saw last year, we were like, oh, man, can we get better? And all of a sudden this year we saw that the team got better. We need that. And we definitely are going to need everyone in the stands because it's a different vibe when Bragg's got 19, 20,000 in it. It just is. But we also need to probably bring in the reins a little bit, like rein in the quarterback. But good times we had by all, man. That's me telling myself to get up out of here. Big shout out to HBCU Digital Network. This is home. Check out Hersu and the Black Techies. Also, and check us out Thursday, 8 o'clock. We're going to be right back here. And look for us on Saturday, post game. We're going to do a little something. We might not stream it here on HBCU Digital's platform, but we'll definitely do it on FQ FAMU Fangs Up podcast just because they're on a different network, and I ain't trying to get in trouble with that. But we will definitely streamed on definitely the Twitter and the Facebook for H4 post game instant reaction. But we're going to do a little something with the ONG Strike Zone. So kind of do a super cast between the two shows so that we can come together and we can talk trash and we can have a lot of fun, but that we still are always one FAMU. So that being stated though, man, we're going to see y'all again Thursday, 8:30, 8 o'clock. I said 8:30. Man, it's getting late. Long night last night. But as always, y'all, it's going to be Fangs Up.
Yeah, baby, you know what time it is. Now let's get it started.
Are you kidding me? Unreal.
While our HBCUs are mostly known for academic rigor, community, they also know how to turn up.
Does he have it?